Now that we've got a reusable chart component, we can make separate charts for both our pressure and humidity as well. The first thing we need to do is pull our pressure and humidity data off of our weather object, just the same way we did with our temps. Looking back at our API response, I'm going to grab a single forecast here. So here's the main object. Here's the temperature, which we've already grabbed. So here's pressure and humidity. So we'll first do pressures, citydata.list.map, weather.main.pressure. And then I'm just going to copy paste the same thing for humidities and humidity. There we go. Okay, pretty straightforward stuff. Here's our array of data for pressures and humidities. Now we just got to add in a chart for each of them. I'm going to condense down the TD to just be a single line, like so. And then I'm going to copy paste 2 more of them. So the first one will be our pressures data going in, and I'm going to give that a color of green. And then the third one will be our list of humidities, and that will have a color of black. Okay, let's go ahead and refresh our page and search for San Francisco. And looks good. It looks like we've got our temperature, our pressure, and our humidity. And we can get many different ones. So here's Phoenix, Denver, Seattle, Sacramento, Salt Lake, and so on. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. I like where we're at. There's just one little thing. I know that I said I don't like how humidity isn't showing up on, I guess Seattle doesn't provide humidity. So let's just do Sacramento again. There we go, got our humidity. So I know that I said earlier that the intent here is just to give the user like a quick glance and say, okay, in the next 5 days the weather is generally going up and it's going to be more humid or what have you. But it would still be really nice to have a little bit more of a numeric value on here. Something to say like, okay, I've got a pretty good idea of what the average temperature is going to be over the next 5 days. So let's see if we can't add a little bit more indication here to give our users a little bit more idea of what the weather is going to be like. We're going to do that in 2 separate ways. First, we're going to add a line on our chart here that's just going to be a single line that indicates the average. Second, we'll add a number underneath each chart that shows the average for those 5 days. So we'll do the first one first, the chart, where we're going to show the average line in here. Flipping back over to the docs, adding this average line is really straightforward. So this is basically what we want right here, a reference line, right? All we need to do is add a Spark Lines reference line, and they've got a type of mean here. I would really like to do one where the type is average. So in the documentation, which I've already looked up, getting an average line, we just need to pass in a property here of AVG, short for average. So this should be a pretty quick change. Let's give it a shot. Back inside of our project, I'm going to flip over to chart.js, and we'll pull off that additional property here, the Spark Lines reference line, and then we pass it as an additional child, Spark Lines reference line with a type of AVG for average. Okay, let's refresh and give this a shot. Sacramento. And cool, looks good. We've got our average line in here now. So let's do step 2, where we show a numeric average underneath each chart on here. To get the average in here, it's going to be pretty straightforward. All we need to do is take the props.data that we already have and calculate an average from it. And if you remember back to math class, calculating an average is really simple. All we need to do is sum up all the data in the array and then divide by the length of the array, and that will give us an average. So let's first place our average in here. So I'm going to make a new div, and then inside of it, we're going to make a helper function in just a second here called average. So we'll say average with props.data. So the purpose of average, as you might imagine here, is just to calculate an average, and we're going to pass our array of numbers directly into that function. So let's make that helper. We'll say function average gets some data, and then return, and then we'll calculate the average right here. Now to help us calculate the average, we're going to use the utility library Lodash again. I've already included Lodash inside this boilerplate project, so all we have to do at the top is import underscore from Lodash. Remember, we usually use the underscore to represent Lodash as opposed to stuff like, React from React and blah, blah, blah. If you want to install Lodash yourself, or if you want to use like, underscore or what have you, feel free. All you got to do is at the terminal, just do npm install -- save Lodash or underscore or what have you. That's all it is. Okay, so with Lodash, calculating the average is very straightforward. We'll just use the helper function sum. So we'll sum the data and then divide by data.length. And because that might come back as an ugly decimal number, we'll also round it with the helper function round. Okay, let's go ahead and give this a shot now. We've defined our helper function average, and we're passing it our array of data, which is props.data. So I'll refresh the page and search for a city. And cool, we've got our averages in here. So our temperature is in Kelvin. Our pressures are in HPA, which I think is like no, it can't be hectopascals. It's something pascals, which is a pressure, and our humidity, which is a percentage. So I know that because I looked up the documentation, but our users don't really know that. They don't really have any idea what the units are here. And just seeing the number like 280, they could be sitting there thinking like, my gosh, 280 degrees Fahrenheit, that's really, really, really hot. So I think that we still need to add a little bit more clarity here by adding in some units. Let's do that really quick. We'll add in the units on our headers of our table right here. So in weather list, we had defined our headers inside of the table. So our temperature is Kelvin. The pressure is, actually I think Kelvin is capital K, or it's supposed to be lower k. We'll go with capital. The pressure is HPA, and the humidity is a percentage. So let's give this a shot. Sacramento. And all right, so we now got K, HPA, and percent. But still, the numbers, it's really not clear what's going on with the numbers. I think we could do a little bit better. Let's add an additional property to our chart that we'll pass in that will specify the units. So we'll say units. For the temperature will be K. Units for pressures will be HPA. And the humidity will be percent. And then we need to make sure that we consume those properties that we're passing to chart inside of the chart component. So we'll flip back over to chart, and next to the average that we're already calculating, I'll add a space and then props.units. So let's do another try here. All right, this is starting to look a lot better. So now it's much more clear that we've got 280 Kelvin, HPA, and 90%. This is probably a really good time to mention that if you want to convert the units on here to Celsius or Fahrenheit to suit your locale, whichever system you're used to, or if you want to make the HPA a little bit more usable than this right here, you can certainly feel free to convert all the units. A really good place to do that would be to just do it right here, inside it, right in the temps. You could do this as just saying, const temps. Well, it wouldn't be a const anymore. But we can just basically say map that array with temp, and then fat arrow, and then your whatever your conversion might be, which I think to go to like Celsius is what, minus 273. So again, totally optional if you want to do that conversion right here, totally up to you. I'm going to leave mine as just being Kelvin for right now. Okay, so this looks pretty good. We've got our 3 charts in place, and they all have units on here. Let's go ahead and continue in the next section.